Lasciavo prossimo, друзі мої! Welcome to Ucupaint Part 2. Today I'm going to cover some very cool features of this fantastic add-on. We're going to look at masking, edge wear, baking, probably some more stuff. Please check out Part 1 if you haven't already. The link will be below. Chodimo! First things first, Ucupaint comes bundled with Blender by default. Just enable it in Preferences, Add-ons, look for Ucupaint, and under there you'll see it's also available at this link, extensions.blender.org. Right, I scribbled something very Ian McHugh-ish, of course, in my sketchbook, and then quickly slapped a model together in 3D. I thought perhaps this could be some sort of little service vehicle or something. Let's bring it to life with some textures. For the most part, I'm going to focus on this main body section. So I'll hide all these extra bits on the side, these components. Now I've already done a quick UV unwrap on this thing, so I can get straight into painting. Quick Ucupaint node setup. I'll call it matte body main. Switch to texture paint mode. Add a new layer. Now in part 1, I used this first option, new image, which just creates a blank transparent canvas that we can then just start painting on. Today, I'm going to use a more typical PBR workflow and import a pre-made material complete with all its various channels, color, roughness, normal, and so on. So instead of new image, I need this open images to single layer. I've got a bunch of Quixel materials from fab.com, and I'm after a corroded metal one. Today, I'll just select albedo, that's color, normal, and roughness. And then click Open Images to Single Layer. I'm going to rename this layer to Paint Corroded. Now, you can see that there are 3 little image icons in this layer, corresponding with the 3 images I just selected to create the layer. And if we go down into the layer controls, first of all, under Layer Source, I can see the image path. Then under the channels, roughness, twirl that down, and you can see it's automatically plugged in the roughness image I selected. And the same goes for the normal. Right, I'm going to go back a step here and create a rust layer to go underneath this one. Once again, click plus, open images to single layer, and I've got this great rusty material. Again, for today, I'll just stick with albedo, roughness, and normal. I'll rename this layer to rust. Perhaps I'll brighten the color up a touch. Add a modifier to the color channel. I'll go for an RGB curve. If I add a knot up here at the brighter end of the spectrum and drag it up just a hair, that just gives the colors a bit of a lift. Now I want this rust to sit underneath the paint corroded layer, and I can reorder layers with these little arrows. Of course, that's now hidden, which brings me to the next big Ucupaint topic, masking. I want to mask out bits of the paint layer to allow the rust to show through. So with the paint corroded layer selected, I'll twirl open the layer controls and go down until I find mask. Click the familiar looking plus button to add a mask. And we get a similar looking array of options here. Today, I'm going to go for edge detect. I'll leave these settings alone for now and OK that. At first glance, it looks like my layer's been hidden. But if we look at it more closely, you can see that in fact, some of the blue color of that paint layer is visible around some edges. We can inspect the mask in the same way we can inspect layer color with this preview button at the top. I'll switch the type of preview from layer to active mask / override. And now as I click through these little icons in the layer slot, I get a preview of what each image is contributing to the layer. The last one over on the right is the edge detect mask. Only the white areas allow any color through, which is why we could only see a bit of blue along the edges. No problem in Ucupaint, of course, because we can add modifiers. Under the layer settings, mask, click the cog. I'll add an invert modifier. Now I'll switch off preview. Okay, that's very subtle. Switch preview back on and let's add another modifier to this mask. Let's increase the contrast with a ramp. I want to drag that black knot across to make it blacker. Let's also increase the radius of this edge detect a bit here. Again, switch off preview. Okay, much more visible. Maybe not perfect, but definitely an improvement. Okay, now I'm thinking this paint layer is a bit crazy, bit over busy. So I think I'll dial down the contrast and saturation here. So again, I'll add a couple of modifiers. Hue saturation, of course. I think I'll take the saturation down by half, 0.5 there. And I'll add a brightness contrast modifier too. Now, contrast needs quite a delicate touch, so a tiny value like minus 0.05 should do. Right, now, what if it's a really messy job this poor bloke has, and some kind of fuel or something often gets spilt down the side of the vehicle and stains the layers below? I'll make a new layer, and I think I want a mottled effect, kind of rainbowy petrol effect. So I'll go for a noise texture as my layer type. I'll call the layer leakage. I want it darker than this and more saturated, so you know the drill. Add a modifier or two. You can even double this layer up if you wanted, just duplicate the layer and really get it dark and saturated that way. Now, for the mask, I've got a few very nice leakage ones, again, from Quixel. Click plus to add a mask, and this time I'm going to use this second option, open image as mask. For the mapping on this mask, I'm going to try something a little different. Twirl open the vector settings, and instead of UV, this time I'll select Decal. This will enable us to move this mask around really easily. Underneath, there's this handy Select Decal Object button, and if I click that, now I can use the ordinary transform controls, G, R, and S, to move, scale, and rotate that mask. If for some reason the decal is not visible, it's off in some weird place, you can always shift right click on your model to position the 3D cursor kind of where you want the mask to be, and then with the model selected, back in Ucupaint, click this Set Position to 3D Cursor button. Now, if I orbit over the model, you can see that this mask is being projected straight through the model. So I've got these streaks across the top, which you might think is okay. I could always scale the decal down along that axis, in this case the x-axis, to mitigate that a little bit. Let's try that. Then again, we've now got this sharp cutoff, so you could leave it as it is, and then perhaps it'd be better to just make another layer and paint something over the top if you want. Now for some graphics, some text on the side. You may have seen my stencil texture tutorial, but I think decal mapping is probably a bit more of a flexible way to add details like graphics, like proper decals. So let's do that now. Just for the sake of trying something different, let's add a new solid color layer. Something off-white, maybe a touch of blue in there. And now I want a new mask. And I'm going to navigate to my text graphic. Then under mapping, again, I'll go for decal. Again, click select decal object. And again, move it, scale it, rotate it the way you want. I'll move this layer down underneath the leakage layer. That would seem more logical with this little arrow here. And I think I'll just duplicate this layer to make another graphic. I'm going to call this one text K3. Remove this mask and add a new mask. Again, open image as mask, and I want to navigate to my next graphic. And again, I'll use decal mapping and transform it the way I want. So that's cool, but could be better. Both of these graphics are quite new looking, despite the gunge over the top of them. Let's add a bit of damage, say around the edges of them, a bit of wear and tear. First of all, I want to be able to affect both of these graphics at the same time. Saves me faffing around with a separate mask for each graphic. So I'm going to group them together. I'll click the little plus as if I'm making a new layer, and this time select Layer Group. I'll call it something logical, Graphics Clyde K3. You can see it's giving me the option to add a mask. Yes, please. That gives me some more options. Under mask type, I want image. 2K is fine. And now using these little arrows, I can opt to move these text layers, these graphic layers, into that group. Let's get our heads around this now. We've got a new blank image acting as a mask. Let's look at it in preview mode. Select the mask, switch to active mask override, hit preview. Okay, a completely white mask allowing all of our layer, or group in this case, to be seen. I'll switch to a grunge brush to mess this mask up a bit. Use one of those brushes from the last Ucupaint tutorial. I only want to paint grayscale values in this mask, so make sure these color chips at the top are black and white by hovering over and resetting them by hitting backspace. Now, if I want, I can just toggle between black and white by tapping X. I want my brush to paint black. Switch off preview mode so I can see how it's affecting my layer and just get painting. I just want to scuff these graphics up a little bit. Brilliant. So now we've got all these clever mask layers and groups and whatnot. But if I wanted to export this to, say, a game engine or some other 3D software, well, I'd need to flatten this all down and turn it into the kind of PBR maps that we first imported when making those paint and rust layers, like those Quixel ones. And would you believe it? The mighty Ucupaint can even do that. It's a super easy process. Probably save your work first though. Then just go up to the topmost cog on the Ucupaint panel and click Bake All Channels. In this menu, select your resolution and either your CPU or GPU, then just pull the trigger. A minute or two later, what you should be looking at is your material with baked channels. Twirl the settings open in Ucupaint and you'll see the options and edits are gone. But you can even bloomin' well switch between the baked version and the live version if you like, with all your fancy layers in case you want to edit them. You just click this Use Baked button. There you are. All my settings and tweakings are back. I'll just toggle back to the baked version. Now, these baked images will all be packed into the blend file automatically when you save, but if you want to save the PBR maps to a specific folder, you can do that down here under the layer stack. Save as all. Let's give it a go. Right, now let's do a test. Let's see if these baked things really did work. I'm going to hit this shield so I don't lose this material altogether, and then just hit that minus to get shut of this material slot. That material's gone off my model. Then I'll make a new blank material, call it maybe PBR Bake Test. Then I'll open a shader editor and using the Node Wrangler add-on, get that enabled if you haven't already. Now I can just use the shortcut Control-Shift-T to make an image texture setup. Navigate to where I just saved those images to. And abracadabra, it works. Ucupaint. I can't tell you how good this thing is. And there's even more stuff it can do. So stay tuned for more. Thanks again for watching. Дуже дякую. До зустрічі.
3D from Zero makes tutorials and tips about 3D software. If you're into 3D, or you'd like to be, check out my free course on 3dfromzero.com, and there are some paid courses there too. Thanks for watching.